Hi, World Civ students. This is your second part of Russia. We're going to get into it pretty quick here. I do want to cover one housekeeping item, and that is in terms of a lot of you have heard the announcement from the governor, and now our district, of course, has concurred with it, in that the school will be dismissed until the end of the school year, right? And I know that elicits responses in two ways. One, that as a student, some of you are hoping, understandably, to have some social, formalized goodbye here at the school before the school year ended. And that's a bummer. I mean, my daughter cried, and she was really bummed about it. And in that process, I feel for you too. And I know a lot of you aren't seniors, but especially for the seniors. And with that being the case, I hope you know that is, yes, a bummer, and you'll also find motivation in my class specifically because this is the lather, rinse, repeat routine we're doing here. I'm uploading YouTube modules, you have your guided notes, you have your assignment due on Monday, and we'll do the same thing for the next cycle leading into the test, just like we've done before, and we'll do one more unit before the end of the year. But this is a drip feed approach that I hope you find compelling and not overwhelming. That's my hope. That's my hope for you. I hope that's the case. Okay, so that's a thought to keep in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is, for those of you, and I through parent-teacher conferences yesterday, I did contact and got contact from some of you. This announcement has sort of kicked in your pants because, and you were honest with me, that a lot of you were just assuming maybe we'll come back on May 1st and I'll just sort of be in my funk while I'm here in this quarantine, but after May 1st I'll come back and we'll get going, I'll pick the pieces up. And now that that's not the case, some of you are like, oh, I gotta get going. And in that case, welcome. Thanks for trying to get back into the swing of it, and we'll work with you. Grading, by the way, just to be clear for this class, that's how it is for the whole school too, but the default for the district K through 12 is going an A, B, C, D route, the normal route, unless you specifically tell me. So I do recommend by the end of the try, towards the end of the try, if there's any of you who are going with a pass option, just trying to take the pass option, I would recommend not doing that because you don't know collegiate-wise long-term what the specific schools, and there's all these secondary, well, post-secondary schools in the U.S. I would not recommend going that route. It's not in your best interests to do that. But you have that prerogative. So be aware, though, you can't just declare it out into the nether sphere and saying, like, I'm going to take a pass credit. Like, you've got to specifically tell each teacher that you have as you get closer to the end of the try. Otherwise, it's just going to be a default A, B, C, D. And again, I would recommend the A, B, C, D because it affects your collegiate GPA in terms of trying to get admitted, trying to get honors, trying to get presidential scholarships. You don't want to have to explain, well, it was a pass. Really, unless there's extenuating circumstances, I'm telling you, and in this specific class where it's rather straightforward, I would be shooting for that A, B, C, D. Okay, but there's the option for pass credit if you so choose. Now we're going to shift from there into where we were last time. We're talking about political parties. So at the very bottom of the page under Russia, you'll see the bottom, and then on the back you've got some space. There are a total of 5 different parties that we're going to write down. There are more than that in Russia, but Russia's not unique. Russia is like many democracies where they have a couple voting mechanisms that encourage different parties to happen. The U.S., we have a winner-take-all system, and it is a majoritarian or plurality system where the person with the most votes gets everything, meaning the seat, the thing, the position, or majority. If they get a majority more than 50%, they get the seat. In many other democracies, they have where a congressional body will have 100 seats, and the people don't vote for the person, they vote for a party instead. And if the party gets 30% of the national vote, the party gets 30% of the seats. Russia does it that way. So that then encourages there to be a lot of parties, as long as you have enough percentage-wise to be involved, right? So just be aware of that. in the U.S., I could list off a lot of different parties, but in the Senate, in the House, and the presidency, it doesn't really have a lot of weight. But in other democracies, Mexico, Russia, to an extent, Nigeria, they have multiple parties that actually have seats. Hence me going through 5 of them in decreasing popularity and importance, right, for seat totals, etc. Party number 1 is United Russia. United Russia. You're going to write down by United Russia that this party was formed by one of the oligarchs. That's Oligarchs. Oligarchs. Was formed by one of the oligarchs, Boris, Boris, Berezovsky. That's Berezovsky. Remember, these are Romanized Russian names. It's in Cyrillic, so I'm giving you spellings that, if it weren't Cyrillic, it doesn't look that way, but to help you spell it out. So Boris Berezovsky, he was one of the original oligarchs. Now let's unpack that. Oligarch means, and Leo, do you know what this is? An oligarch is a ruling class elite at the top who is sort of behind the shadows or in the shadows a little bit. You don't know them. It's not an aristocracy because it's not necessarily just about money. Usually it can be. But an oligarchy are those who are ruling by a few elite, almost like the Illuminati, if you want to call it that. Okay, so the United Russia Party was formed by one of the oligarchs, Boris Berezovsky, to support Putin for president. So in 1999, Yeltsin had to step down because of his health problems, and Yeltsin's daughter and other oligarchs say, we want a strong Russia, a united Russia, where we don't care about what platform we have. We just want to be unified, and we're going to be pro-Putin. In fact, you're going to keep writing here in the first part that ideologically, United Russia is hard to define, except that it's pro-Putin. Ideologically, meaning ideas. If you look at Democrats in the U.S., you say, oh, okay, they want larger government. They want to have more government spending to help those in need, usually for marginalized voices, supporting LGBTQ plus things. Okay, you think of the ideas. You go to Russia, United Russia, and they say, Putin? Wait, Putin? Begins and ends with Putin. They just want national unity. So are they for big defense? Are they for big spending? Are they for big government? If it serves Putin's purposes. And I say that strength. We'll go back to Boris at the very end because he sort of created he was the puppet master, puppet being Putin. Ooh, that's some alliteration. The puppet being Putin might have turned on the master. That's sort of where we see with Boris. He was an oligarch over political management and press and so forth. Okay. The second party, meaning in decreasing number of seats in their Congress, etc., is called the Communist Party. Yeah, it's still around. You can write down the Communist Party still exists, but it is significantly weaker than it used to be in the Soviet era. It is significantly weaker than it used to be in the Soviet era. Right, so the USSR, communist era, that was their heyday. They are around, but they're not as powerful. Keep writing here that ideologically, they are less reformist than the other parties. They're all about centralized planning and nationalism. All right, so ideologically, they're less reformist than others, and they're all about centralized planning and nationalism. Centralized planning for 5,000 points. Let's see. Leo's already answered a whole lot here. Nora, help us out. And congrats, Nora. I heard that you have made it into the primaries, I believe, for student leadership. So awesome. Nora, do you know what centralized planning means? Hint, it sounds like what it is. Right, the government plans. That's it. So instead of having you locally to make decisions, it's centrally done. So instead of having, Nora, if you were in student leadership, instead of having you make decisions on behalf of the sophomore class, I think that's what it'll be next year, Dave Swenson, our principal, would say, I'm just going to make the decisions. That's centralized planning, usually with money, and also nationalism, where nationalism doesn't have to be bad. Hyper-nationalism can get into fascism of saying, like, our country's so good, you stink, right? There's this separation. But they believe in, like, nationalism. So a lot of people who were communists might be in the United Russia Party, but you still have those who are more elderly and like, yeah, communism, that was my heyday. That's what it's all about. Centralized planning, economically controlled by the government. And that's their platform. Okay, third party you're going to write down is a just Russia. So three things. A just Russia. And you write down and say that this party wants a welfare state, but not a lot of political freedom. Okay, so a just Russia, some people might think like these are social justice workers fighting for marginalized voices who don't have their voice out there, who are on the margins. No, they just care about money. They are more socialist, right? So think Bernie Sanders, that type of idea, but in more extreme way. They want more government money, higher taxes, etc., to help people to give justice that way. But they're not about political freedom. So they want a welfare state, meaning the government gives think like welfare checks, that stereotype, which is unfortunate, but is there. They want money to help those in need and a welfare state, but not for political freedom. But they get seats. You know, it's a weird sounding party, but we translate it a just Russia, right? Like a justice, filled with justice. Fourth thing you're going to write down is liberal Democrats. Oh yeah, this sounds great for us in the West, but the party really isn't that good. Liberal Democrats. You write down led by Zhirinovsky, so Zhirinovsky, Zhirinovsky, led by Zhirinovsky. This group has not garnered a lot of support, but at times they talk about nuking Japan. At times they talk about nuking Japan. They get some support, but they haven't garnered a whole ton. Led by Zhirinovsky, they've talked about nuking Japan. Okay, so in terms of this, it's pretty harsh too. That's the right way to say this. Zhirinovsky, who has descendancy from Semitic or Jewish cultures, has also said we don't like the Jews and we don't like the Japanese. Japanese in World War II really sucker punched not just the U.S. in terms of Pearl Harbor, but also did it in eastern Russia on some contested lands. And to this day, certain Russians are, for lack of a better term, a little salty about it. And Zhirinovsky plays up to that. He also has had success in terms of, think Fiddler on the Roof, when you have the scattering of Israel and all the different tribes and spreading out and all that stuff, many Ukrainian and Russian Jews existed. And they were put in what we call now ghettos of small enclosed conclaves of people that we put them there because we don't like them, right? That's sort of, we make our own bed and we have to lie in it, so to speak. Zhirinovsky is in many ways anti-Jewish, in many ways anti-Japanese, but they have gained some support. And that leaves our fifth and final group. And that is named Yabloko, Yabloko, which I believe in Russian is apple. You want to write down that this is one of the only real democratic parties. They support greater civil liberties, more integration into the West, and membership to the EU. So they support civil liberties, freedom of speech, freedom of press. They support more integration into the West, like Western ideas, and into the European Union. Wow! However, since 2007, they have not really gained any seats in the Duma. However, since 2007, they have not gained any real seats in the Duma. Duma being their Congress. It's their Capitol building, if you will. This is what's so sad, and this is what we'll get to with Putin. He's so good on this. That in 2007, he basically said, like proportional representation, people vote for the party, and whatever percentage of seats they get is the percentage that we give them, right? Except if you're polling at 7% or less, then we won't give you any seats. Yeah. Oh, what's that? Oh, what is Yabloko polling at the time? Oh, it's 7%. So he effectively kills the only real Democratic Party found in Russia. It's gone. I mean, in terms of seats. That's why we write it down fit. That's pretty good. I mean, if you were trying to be passive aggressive with somebody and be like, all right, so we're going to go see movies, and then like John Doe raises their hand like, I want to go too. And you're like, I don't want him going with us. You can say, yeah, we're going to go, but we're going to go, and you know they have a curfew. We're going to go to the 10 o'clock showing. They're like, oh, I guess I can't go because my mom wants me to be at home. That's basically what Putin's done here. He didn't call them out and say, like, get rid of them, because remember, he'd lose power by doing that. But he's able to shift it to where they are effectively out, right, in that analogy. Okay, let's now go into society. For nationality, by nationality, I want you guys in parentheses, just by nationality, we're going to talk about like ethnicity. And some say, well, like if you're in Russia, you're Russian. Yes, but there are two main ethnic groups. And if you remember from the background notes I sent you, that PowerPoint that you can look through, and you know, I don't know. I might show you a couple, we'll see in the future, of like a couple of their diagrams that could help you out, just so it's not like a talking head as much, but a little more interactive. We'll see about that. I might do that. But what I can show you, or at least talk about here, is in parentheses, you want to write down that nearly 80% are Slavic, Slavic, and the rest are Arab minorities. And it doesn't always fall exactly into that, but you have like 80% who's Slavic, Russian. You think of the idea of Russian, Slavic, right? Slavophile, those who love the Slavic culture. Ethnically, they look very similar to Anglo-Saxon Caucasians, right? Like what most people in the United States are. But they do have a different jawline, usually different eyebrow line, and that's what can distinguish. Not that that matters, but just so you can see that majority then is at play a lot of times against the minority group, which is about 20% Arab minorities. Because of the southern border, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, you have Arab minority groups who say, I need jobs, I'm coming up. Similar to immigration patterns, heck, for 5 points here. Help us out here, Jonathan, Mr. Hodgson, that we talked yesterday. Or at least I got your email. What is the migration patterns for the U.S.? Ding, 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 ding. From Mexico into the U.S., some of the border issues. There's a tension between that, Slavic and Arab. Okay, so knowing that context, in this section of nationality, there's going to be a total of, let's do this. There are two subsections you're going to write down. The first one takes about 2/3 of the space, is called Chechnya, okay, and Romanizing it Chechnya, Chechnya. And then go about 2/3 down, and then you'll write down Georgia, just like our state, but the original Georgia, as in a country in Eastern Europe. Okay, so Chechnya. In Chechnya, there's going to be a total of 4 things we'll write down. 4 things. I'm going to try to summarize some of this because, again, being moderate, as I don't want to overwhelm you with information for the test that we won't test you on, and we'll make that work. Okay, first thing to write down is some regions of Russia want independence, but still maintain allegiance for economic benefit. So some areas want independence, but they maintain allegiance for economic benefit. Chechnya is one of the 89 regions, but they will not be given independence due to Islamic extremism. They will not be given independence due to Islamic extremism. And that is, you could say Putin doesn't want to lose power because, again, secession, U.S. history, we don't want to have civil war because then if you do it for one, then everybody else can leave and it's bad. You can say that, that's true. He has cited, Putin has, as did Yeltsin. Yeltsin actually did a lot of war and stuff against Chechnya. That they're on the border. If you look at the map for Russia, it's one of the regions on the border between that and other Arab major groups or countries. Islamic extremism, meaning that he said that they were fighting against Russia in the name of a jihadist type thing and they were terrorists. That's not for me to decide because even historians today are sort of divided on what they are or what were their motivations. They wanted independence, an independent Islamic state. But that's what you're going to have the first part is some areas wanted independence, but they stay for economic benefit. Chechnya was like, I'm fine, we out. But Russia wouldn't grant it according to them because of Islamic extremist tendencies. Okay. So the second thing you're going to write down is, after many conflicts, Chechen, Chechen, Chechen rebels orchestrated the Nord-Ost siege, Nord-Ost, Nord-Ost siege. So, after many conflicts, Chechen rebels orchestrated the Nord-Ost siege. Let me explain what happens here. This happens in 2002. I remember hearing it on the news. It was crazy. Nord-Ost Theater was in Moscow, and it was basically one of the most impressive Broadway-style theaters and performances that had been orchestrated, gathered by Russian playwrights and choreographers and production assistants. New York Times reviews said it's just as good as anything that you'd see on Broadway. It was almost a Les Mis style performance based on what for Russian history is one of the most proud, noble sacrifices they've made. So for 5,000 points, Caleb Wilkerson, what is it? Man, there's times I just want to like pay for the Zoom license so that we can have a whole bunch of people here for more than like 45 minutes. I'm tempted. Anyway, but Caleb, looking at that, what do you think in Russian history is the most noble, proud thing they've ever done? Ding, ding, ding! World War II. They sacrificed and millions of their own people to help stop the spread of fascism and Nazis specifically. And those battles are so proud of. So this Nord-Ost Theater and play was about that. At the last night of the opening season, the musical has finished and thousands have left, but about 850 members are still there, both cast members, production assistant, and those who were attendees. Chechen rebels took it hostage. You had a couple dozen of them dressed in full riot gear, and they took it hostage. And as they took it hostage, they then on live camera feeds told the national government saying, grant us independence or on the hour, every hour we will kill people. So after a couple deaths, the U.S. gets involved. Other countries say, hey, Putin, you got this? Because you're new. This is 2002, 2 years after you start. We can help out. Secret agents, and Putin's like, I've got this. I've got this. And the country's like, you got this? Yeah, I got this. He didn't really have it. The third thing you're going to write down is the Russian government releases experimental gas into the ventilation system. Releases experimental gas into the ventilation system, killing 130 of the hostages. Killing 130 of the hostages. This is a crazy hostage crisis. You have a Broadway-style theater taken hostage. Chechen rebels say, we want independence. Putin's like, I'm not going to do it. We don't negotiate with terrorists. Here's experimental gas. And the rest of the world's like, dude, we haven't even researched this. What's this? They released it, and it did put everybody to sleep. Put them to sleep. Cool. And as they separated the bodies out, terrorists over here and the hostages over here, because it was experimental, many of the young and the elderly did not come out of their slumber, and they died of a cardiac arrest. 130 of them. So I'm not here saying the Russian government was worse than those who were Chechen rebels, but it was a stark number. But many Russians were like, Russia for Russians, like, here we go, you did it, way to be brutal or die. And that Slavic mentality, which is different from us, doesn't mean it's bad, it's just different. They applauded what he did, and Putin rose in popularity because of it. The fourth thing you're going to write down here is Additionally, Chechen rebels seized a Russian school on the border, demanding independence. And over 350 people died, mainly children, after Putin denied them. So additionally, Chechen rebels took over a Russian school on the border, demanding independence, and more than 350 people died, mainly children, after Putin denied them. I mean, this is about 2000, getting close to 2008 at this point, between 2004 and 2008, that this Russian school was taken hostage. And it was hard because you have an almost elementary or primary school, and it was burned down. Again, an ultimatum: give us independence or they die. And many died. Now, you can still write in this, because if I'm looking at this correctly, you've written down about why certain areas want to leave, why certain areas want to stay, and you've got the Nord-Ost siege, and then you got about the deaths there. Yeah, and this final thing you're writing down for Chechnya, this fourth thing, and that they took over the school, and 350 plus died. Keep writing this fourth part, that Putin eventually allowed them to have their own constitution, but they are still part of Russia. So, I mean, he gamed it pretty well in a way. As a leader, that's a good, commendable thing, where we kept the peace. And since 2008, when this sort of went down, they have their own president, they have their own constitution, but they're still part of Russia. So, yeah, they're still part of Russia. Certain areas have more power than others, and Chechnya is a little different. It's almost like if Minnesota were to demand from our federal government that they have their own, like, grand poobah dictator of Minnesota, and the federal government's like, sure, but you're still a state, and you still owe income tax, you still, all these things. So that's sort of what Putin does, and they've by and large kept the peace since then. Okay, under the section of Georgia, last thing we'll write down here, there's one thing you're going to write down in this section, that is, in 2008, a region named South Ossetia, so Ossetia. In 2008, a region in South Ossetia wanted to become independent and part of Russia. And so Putin invaded for democracy. So 2008, a part of Georgia named South Ossetia wanted independence to become part of Russia. So Putin invaded for democracy. And I put that in quotes because that's some wordsmithing by Vladimir Putin. Man, that's some wordsmithing. What this means is there's a country that used to be part of the Soviet Union. If you look on the map, there's a southern country named Georgia, right on the border. A really pretty country, a nice sort of resort-esque type country. And so Georgia, as a country, wanted to, what's the right way to say this? They were fine. In fact, they actually fell in love in a way with George W. Bush. They named some streets after him. They invited him over for a parade, and not because they're named George, but funny coincidence. But who here didn't like that? Understandably, like the ex-girlfriend here, if you will, Vladimir Putin. I'm fine if you're independent, but don't go with the U.S. type thing. And they fell in love with him a little bit. And Putin did not like this. And a play from his playbook was that he invaded. There were tanks in 2008 on live feeds. I remember this. that they crossed the border and went into South Ossetia, claiming that this area wants to vote to leave and secede Georgia and sort of become part of the Commonwealth of Independent States, the CIS, with Russia. And like the UN's like, wait, what? What happened? Yeah, we already voted. And like tanks invaded and they voted to secede and become part of Russia. And it was almost like a weird reactionary move to try to make it seem like Russia hasn't lost popularity. In fact, you others might like the US, but we still have parts of Russia or parts of Georgia that want to be part of Russia. So again, 2008, an independent part called South Ossetia of Georgia wanted to become part of Russia, so Putin invaded for democracy. So it's, in a way, in a weird analogy, it's like speeding on the roads and being very dangerous and like running people off the side of the road. Why are you doing this? I gotta help my grandmother. Yeah, but you don't need to do it that way. Like, you don't need to invade. It was a weird counter move. And so Putin can get sensitive in that way. He wants to have people like them and not like other countries. So invading Georgia was part of that. Does the UN recognize South Ossetia as part of Russia? Not really, but it is like a weird dotted line area in Georgia. Okay, we'll get to more of that under civil society for current events. But we'll stop there. What we'll do is, let's see, on Friday, we'll finish up religion and people. We'll get to Crimea and civil society and Putin's final grasp for power. So we'll do that. Awesome. Have a good one. We'll see you on Friday.